Hello, people. Today I've got Arthur Aron, the world-renowned researcher, as a guest on this podcast. It's unbelievable. I'm so nervous. I can't even get the words out correctly. Arthur has been researching for many, many years about topics that I think are relevant to each and every single person out there. It's about how humans develop relationships, how love works, how we can maintain relationships, which is also very important, and how we can make sure that they are long-term positive experiences, and how we keep that fresh feeling over a long time in that relationship, especially for romantic couples, marriages, which is very important for us. But we can also use these informations for all of our relationships, if it's friendships, if it's corporate culture, everything. So please, Art, it's an honor to have you with me. Please use a bit about yourself. It's so thrilled to have you here. Thank you very much.
It's very kind of you, Fey. What a nice introduction.
Well, so let's dive right into it. Let's make it pretty simple. I was really excited when I read your papers. It's about how you've coined a few terms that I would like to go through. One of the first things is to say it properly, the self-expansion model. I would like, could you elaborate a bit on what that means?
Yeah, it's a research. It's a name we use in research for a theoretical thing that has two key elements. One is that a fundamental human motive is to expand the self, to increase our abilities, our knowledge, our resources. One motivation is to survive, but another motivation is to expand, to explore, to grow. And so that's one part of the theory. The other part is, as it relates to relationships, is one of the ways we expand is by forming close relationships. Because in a close relationship, to some extent, the other becomes part of the self. And thus, I am not just me, but I'm me plus this larger thing that includes the other.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I become more than I have been before when I was in solitude, because now something else outside of me has become part of my identity, so to speak.
Yes. In fact, we've done lots of research showing that we actually mix up ourselves with the other person in all kinds of contexts. And when we think about it, they're sort of part of we call our cognitive structure of the self.
Could you, for the people who might not have the slightest clue, could you elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah. So, for example, one of the studies we did, we took people who are in close relationships and we gave them a series of adjectives to describe themselves, to describe the close other. And then later, in another context, we showed them these things and said, how true is each of these things of you? And for each one that came up, they would press a true or a not true button. Now, what we found is that the ones they'd said they were true of before, they still said they were true of. But if it was different from the partner, they were slower, consistently, across many, many items. In other words, they had a harder time distinguishing who am I when it's different from who the partner is. And of course, if I'm not something and my partner is something, I also have a harder time saying it's not me. And we've done a lot of one of the things we found is with a close other, when you look at pictures that are morphed with the close other to different degrees, you have a harder time distinguishing which one is yourself or which is your partner versus yourself and some stranger or some celebrity that you know quite as well. We've done a lot of studies showing this inclusion of other in the self. Another thing is when we ask you to think about yourself and to think about your partner, and we look at the brain responses. You're doing this in a fMRI machine or an MRI machine. We're measuring the neural responses. The areas of the self overlap more with the areas of the close other, when it come up when you think close other. So in many ways, and we've done lots of other studies on this with memory and so forth. And in fact, one of our main measures of closeness, just that sort of capture this, that's been used now in thousands of research studies, is we show people pairs of overlapping circles that overlap to different extent. And we say, which one is true of you and your partner or your friend. And what we find is that that goes along with all these other, cognitive and neural measures. Is the more you say we overlap, the more it looks like you do. And, in lots of ways, when we include the other in the self, when we experience something, they experience something exciting, we feel it, as long as we're aware of it. Yeah.
I think I've read a few of your papers. It's very interesting. One of the takes that I was also very surprised about was that you said it's even under the physiognomy even changes to get a bit more like each other with how the people look. And their looks change when they're long-term together slightly. I don't know. I wanted to ask because I just found it like a little sentence about it. It was
that's
quite
not my
surprising.
research, but someone else did that study. Can't think of his name at the moment, and a very good researcher. And what he showed is that if you look at people's pictures when they first got married, and then you look at their pictures, the two of them years later, people have a harder time distinguishing, who goes with who. They see them as more similar, even if they don't know. You're showing a bunch of pictures, who goes with which. You have a very hard time if they're just getting married. But after they've been together a long time, you have a very easy time saying, oh, these two people go together. These two people go together.
It's really interesting because I read it in one of your interviews and one of your papers about it. It was one of the ways how I got into all of your work. It was really interesting because I thought the idea of experiencing myself through the others, it sounds to me like a very, very interesting concept. Like in physics too, we need another object to observe an object. If there's just one, we won't be able to observe anything. We need the other to be able to discern what we are, who we are, how we are. I thought it was a very, very interesting take. And you also researched a bit on how we choose who that other person is going to be that we allow to get close, or that's worded a bit wrong because it makes it a complete conscious decision, but you also studied how it happens, because it's not that conscious that we choose, okay, this is the person that I want to let close to me, or that's the person that I develop a closeness to. You even research how that develops, and that's a very interesting concept. How do people decide, or how does it happen that someone gets close to us?
Well, it varies in different contexts, but friendship and romantic are a little different in that context. But in general, we want to get close to someone we think is similar. Actually, being similar doesn't matter that much for most things, but thinking you're similar matters a lot. And in fact, when a relationship is going well, we tend to think the person's more similar than they actually are. If it's going badly, we think they're less similar than they actually are. But the similarity matters for a few things. Values and politics matter a little bit, but personality and background don't matter as much. But what matters is, well, of course, with romantic, the physical appearance matters to some extent, especially at the low end. Being unattractive makes it hard. Being very attractive is not a big advantage over just being moderately attractive, but it's the low end that matters. But probably the biggest one is thinking the other person likes you. That turns out to be really important. And when we gathered cases of, 1,000 cases of people reporting what happened when they fell in love with someone, very often it was the person did something that made me think they liked me. And at that moment, bang, there was that response. My friend told me, oh, that person likes you, don't you? Oh, wow, at that moment. Or I ran into this person again at the, the store and I liked her. She seemed nice. And when I walked up to her, she smiled at me, and oh no, at that moment, bang. So that's often, but thinking the other person likes you is really important for initial attraction, and also for desiring to be with the person. As I say, having things in common, believing it. Also, in some cases, having differences is an advantage. So if I really like music and you really like science, if I think we can otherwise make it work, that's an advantage because it's more exciting. Because I'm going to learn from you and you're going to learn from me, and we're going to have, even more in our life.
There's lots of interesting question where it's when is it an advantage to be similar, and when is it an advantage to have different takes? It's like not that easy to discern for me when I read these papers. Some say, oh, it's great to be very similar because then you're going to get along well. For other papers, it's like, no, it's better to have some kind of tension, but not in, like, for example, psychology, not in the big five, where say agreeableness or narcissism, because then you can't stand the other one. But like in hobbies and interests, it might be interesting to have different takes. What's your take on that?
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, when it comes to personality traits, if I am a person who gets angry easily, it's not better for us to have two people like that. or even depression. If we're both really depressed, yes, we'll understand each other better, but it's really hard to have a good relationship. Or if we're both really anxious. I mean, in general, the traits matter a little bit. Probably extroversion, introversion matter a little bit to be similar. But, again, differences can be an advantage because you can learn from each other. Different hobbies certainly can be, presuming you think you could get along in other ways. The person has to be reasonably desirable. And by that, I don't just mean physical appearance, but they have to have a background and, things like that. If the person is a homeless person, it can be harder, or if the person, if you're very well educated and they're not, it can be harder, that sort of thing.
So it's like the core values should somewhere align well, and it should be an alliance or a relationship where at least where the goal would go, both can accept that, like where it's going to develop.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing how sometimes it's like there are people from opposite political parties that are husband and wife, that are, like elected officials of two different parties. But so sometimes they make it work, but it can be difficult, especially if you're very, strong on something and the other person's very strong on the opposite. Those value things can matter.
Well, for the viewers who don't know that, Art has researched also a very important topic, because we go there. That's like one of the questions of long-term success of relationships, and how if you're married to someone for like 10, 20, 30 years and you're still in love, that feeling of really still being in love, you researched if that's true, how it's happening, what effects it has, and how it was achieved. And I think now that we talked a bit about, well, how it's going to work and what does pair well, I think that's the perfect next question on how can I make it work long term.
Yeah. Well, we do know, as you said, that, we did one U.S. national survey that found that 40% of people who'd been married 10 years or longer claimed to be very intensely in love. Now, of course, that means only 20% of those that got married are still together. Only half of those that got married are still together, but still, that's more than we expected. And just to be sure that it's not just people saying it, we did a study where we put people who claim to be very intensely in love in the scanner. We've done a lot of brain scan studies of people who are in love. Most of them are of people who've just fallen in love. But when we look at people who've been married 20 years or so, who claim to be very intensely in love, you put them in the scanner, they look like people who've just fallen in love. There's a couple differences, but the key ones are the same. One difference is that they have more of a bond, the thing you see in animals that you have with people who've just fallen in love, and they have a little less anxiety. When you first fallen in love with someone, are they going to die if they found someone? There's all that tension, but over time, there's less of that. But still, the rest of it, that fundamental dopamine reward area, just like the effect of taking a drug, is very lively in those people. So it's definitely possible. And then the question is, how can you make it happen? And we don't know. We know a lot of what people can do to keep relationships lively. We haven't actually studied whether we're actually setting up a study right now to do this, a long-term study. We're analyzing some long-term results, but we do know that there are things people can do to make their long-term relationships very lively. One of them comes from my research on self-expansion. When you first fall in love with someone, that thing of including the other in the self and growing yourself rapidly is very exciting, very wonderful. It's novel, it's challenging. And that's something we seek as part of our self-expansion desire. So if you're been together for a while, you're used to doing the same things. Again, if you do something new and interesting, that livens, you associate it with the partner in the relationship. We've done a lot of studies showing this, as have others now. So doing things on a regular basis, every week or so, that's new and interesting with your partner, not just the same old, same old. One study we did, we had people for every week, we gave them a list at the beginning, name things, here's a bunch of things. How much do you enjoy them? How exciting are they for each? And then we used the two partners did this separately, and we gave them a list of things. We randomly assigned the couples. Half of them were given a list of things that both had rated as exciting, but only moderately enjoyable. And the other half were given a list of things that both had rated as enjoyable, but only moderately exciting. And we followed them for 10 weeks. And the group that did the exciting one showed a big increase in the quality of their relationship. And others have done studies where they've done interventions where they had people do things and they followed them 4 months later. And sure enough, those that do something, sort of a date a week, with your partner that's new and interesting really can matter. And, my wife and I, she's a researcher in another area, but I collaborate with her and she collaborates with me. And actually the collaboration is pretty exciting, but, everything, we read about our research and other people's research that suggests that we immediately apply to our relationship. So we try to do this regularly. And, we try to regularly do things that are, we were able to, we're so busy with our research, both of us, we were able to take off half a day yesterday and the day before yesterday. And we went out and, what can we do we haven't done around here, there's a zoo that has a place that goes up in the air, that takes you on a gondola way up to look at the people. Well, that might be interesting. And we did it. And it was just, part of it was so new, but it was also beautiful, but we're always constantly, looking for, we like to go to theater, which, theater and plays, they're often kind of new, but, one of the times I like to think about is we're walking back. We were in New York at the time. We're walking back from a play and we go by a bar and we say, our age, we haven't been in a bar in a long time. So we went in the bar and hung out for a while. Just doing things that are new and interesting are really valuable. Now, there's other things too. The new and interesting is mainly from my research. Another thing is having close couple friendships. Having a good friends that's another couple, that's deep, can really also help enliven your relationship. And so we do that. And another is supporting your partner, celebrating your partner's successes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, it's good to also support them when things go badly.
Yeah.
But celebrating their successes has even a bigger positive effect.
Okay. Really?
When I first saw that research, we had just submitted a paper that was mainly her paper, a review of her research on highly sensitive people. That's what she studies, to a very top journal. And we thought, in science, it's always a little tough. We thought, well, we'll see. I don't know if this journal will take it. Let's give it a try. I'm home when the email comes in saying the editor loved it, the reviewers loved it. So I made a poster of that and put it on the front door. Because I just read to do this, because we had a great night. But, it's like, so these are some things you can do to really, there's things you can do to keep it from going bad that are also important. Of course, one of the biggest things people don't like to hear about, and that is your own depression or anxiety, is very hard on the relationship. It's hard on the partner, and it's hard on yourself. When you first enter a relationship, if you're sort of depressed, you're sort of excited, and then you get used to the relationship and you're down and you blame the partner. It's easy to do that. But, so the biggest thing you can do if you're anxious or depressed is to get therapy or learn to meditate, or, if it's serious, to have medications to do it. Another is stressors. Stressors
like outside factors, like
what?
work, to money and so on, or do you?
Yeah, or something serious like you lose a child, or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
But whatever happens, but even small ones or even moderate ones, your partner gets fired from the job, or you do, or or something happens. But I mean, they're really hard because we tend to not think deeply at those times. And so if our partner does something slightly bad, we say, "You always done this and it's terrible." And it's hard to sort of stand back and we tend to not be very good under those times. It's a very hard thing. And another one, of course, is, you know, um, well, people always say, what's more wonderful than falling in love? And I always say, well, what's the, iconic Western example in literature of falling in love?
Romeo and Juliet. I
Yeah.
would say,
How'd that work out?
but it's burned through in 3 days.
Yeah, right. But I mean, the thing is that in some cultures where families and clans really matter, it can be really hard on the relationship if your parents or even in Western modern cultures, if your friends don't approve of the partner, it can be really hard. So friendship, and so it's really important to try to engage, connect your partner to your family and friends so that it's, they feel better about it. So those are some of the big things. And another thing that matters, of course, is for the positive side, is the quality of your sex life. Marriage, it's that matters a lot too, to work at that.
Gotta try to keep it alive and interesting and positive for everyone. Okay.
What?
And positive for everyone. It's
yeah.
I think what you said before, the idea of little adventures together, to like experience new exciting stuff, to try out new stuff, to have, like, if you say once a week might be a bit too much for many people, but once a month, if you do something a bit extraordinary, once a month only, each year you have 12 little adventures together with your spouse. And I think
they don't even have to be big adventures. Like if you go out to eat, you're going out to eat periodically, try a different kind of food.
Yeah.
Go to a restaurant with it doesn't have to be dramatic, but even that can matter. I've never been to this kind of food restaurant, try it. Or even little things are what?
Or like, as you said, we haven't been in a bar for 5 years. Let's go into that strange looking local where we have never been in, something like that. Or just another example, going to the city without a plan. Don't have a date. Just decide at 12 we'll be there and we'll look what we're going to do from there on. Just without a plan, just as an example, myriad, infinite many things one could do. And I think that's such a powerful move.
I mean, it's like we like to go on hikes.
Yeah.
And we do that, for our exercise, we do that 3 times a week or so. We go on a moderate hike. We try to always find a different trail. Now, there are only so many trails around here, but if we can't find a new one that's within driving distance, then we go to one we haven't been to in a long time.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. And you said like what I also want to point out, I think it was, to me personally, it was a very optimistic number. As you said, like 40% of marriages over 10 years are strongly in love with each other. Now, one could say, that's just, as you said, with the divorce rates, you could say, that's just 20%, but it's like, to me, that's still wow, it's still a wow number. Because if I think like in modern media, it's more portrayed like 1 in 100 or 1 in 1,000. That's like the lottery ticket. It's so rare that a man and the wife love each other after 10 years still. And then I read your paper and it's like, wow, 40% of people who are still together. That's awesome. That's really,
it surprised us too.
Yeah.
It surprised us too.
Yeah. Oh, wow. And I liked it when I read it then, that like, okay, maybe they just say so. Maybe they're just saying it. You never know what it's like. They're just used to each other and everything. And then I read further, and you put them into that MRI machine and said the dopamine reward systems show not exactly the similar, but very, very, very close images of the same happening. And that's like, could you, for the viewers who are not that well words and not too much into the technicalities. Like, what does it mean that you see the dopamine reward system? What can they imagine? What happens in the brain in those moments? And
Well, I
what
mean, it's the same thing as when people take drugs to, enliven them. I mean, the reason our brain responds to things like opium and stuff like that is not because our brain was designed for that. Our brain was designed to have a response that's associated with opportunity for great growth, what we call self-expansion. And that area is used for things like falling in love.
Okay.
But it happens to be picked up by certain drugs.
Yeah.
So, this thing of so many people, more than we expect, are still in love. Not everybody likes to hear that. Because if you're getting married, you like to hear it. If you're in a relationship, it's like there's research showing we like to think we're better than them. But, if there's people like that, it's a little scary. On the other hand, it's a nudge to do something.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
wow.
I mean, but yeah, some people it's a little, oh no, I thought we were doing fine. We're okay, But no, but it's good to know because the quality of your relationship is really important.
Yeah.
There's research that shows that's not our research, but there's a lot of research that shows that how long you'll live is more strongly predicted by the quality of your relationships than it is by smoking or obesity. It's like a huge health factor.
Yeah, no, because it's like the hormonal reaction, the neuro reactions, and so on. When you're going to sleep next to someone that you love and that you trust, completely different. It's a completely different game for your body and all of the healing processes, rather than being in solitude or being with someone you can't stand, the distrust and so on. May I ask something that I did not really find out from the papers that I read? I mean, maybe you haven't asked the people, but I'm curious. Just your personal opinion of those marriages that were still strongly in love after all of that time. How many of them found the solution on accident, like, accidentally just worked out on its own? And how many of them were consciously working on the relationship to make it work? What do you have any numbers or any?
We did not, in the survey, we did not ask that question.
Okay.
So we don't know.
Okay.
I would think that that would matter.
Yeah.
And it would be something worth including. It's a good question. Something worth including in another survey that we do. But to my knowledge, we haven't looked at. Someone may have looked at that issue more generally of how much it matters that people try to make the relationship better. I'm trying to think. There was a new study that came out on how much people want to do self-expansion, whether it was to improve their, I think a study did come out showing that it's a positive effect. It's a new study, and I haven't looked at it closely, but there's a lot of research going on in this area.
Yeah, I think, well, we're social animals. It's like if humans want to be with other humans, I think everybody knows the heartbreak is devastating. It's like really,
it's a major cause of suicide.
Yeah. And
but on the other hand, I mean, relationships are really, but not just marital relationships.
Yeah.
I mean, I talked about relationships predicting how long you'll live. If someone's single, but they have really good, deep friendships or deep, extended family relationships, that also works very well for how long they'll live. I mean, having close relationships in general is just really valuable, and being, isolated or lonely is really hard on your health and your life and your mood. The quality of your relationships is also a huge predictor. It's the biggest predictor of how happy you are in life.
Wow. Well, I mean, absolutely logical. I can absolutely understand it, but it's still so powerful to hear that. It's like, wow, really, really. And I thought, to me, the point that you said before is like, making the other person feel that you like them is one of the it's like a huge thing to go through the world, to your friends, to your family, to your spouse, to your, even just to the person that you want to acquire, that you want to flirt with, that you want to get. It's like to be so honest or be so straight and confident, or even to risk your own emotional well-being. Let's be honest. Being getting I'm not interested is always hard. So many people try to play the cool game, like, I don't mind really. It's cool if yes, if not, then no problem. And then you say, no. Let them know you are interested, you like them, you love them, you want them to know that you like them, even if it's friendship or anything. It is a strong impulse for others to say, hey man, maybe that's not such a bad guy or such a bad girl. Hey, I never thought about it, but now that I think about it, not that bad. Could work out, could be interesting.
There's some old research that shows people used to think, well, I should play hard to get. There's some old research that shows it does not help, but it helps for people to think you're hard for others to get.
Wow, really?
If you're, you can see why. But but the other thing that came to mind when you're talking about this is in an ongoing relationship, once it's formulated, a huge factor is responsiveness. Is when someone tells you something, either, that's going on with them or anything, what really matters, we used to think self-disclosure mattered a huge amount. Turns out self-disclosure matters only because it provides an opportunity for responsiveness. And if you're responsive to deep things, that hugely helps and supports all kinds of relationships, friendships, marriages, everything, partnerships, that you understand, you can see why they're feeling that. And you care, and if you can show that, that's a huge factor. Responsiveness.
I gotta admit, I learned that through business. That it was, or let's say not. I learned it through business. I understood it through business, because to me it was always natural. It was a natural thing to just remember people, to listen to them, to, like, if I get to know you and we talk and you tell me you've got a little sister or this or that, or she's going to have a little test next week and we meet 1 month later, for me it was always natural to, like, ask, hey, how was your sister? You told me last time she's going to have a test. Or how is your child? How is that? How did the company go? Da, 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 da. And once I got older, like 20, 25, I realized, man, the people have really such a good feedback to me, because it seems that that's a rare thing. It's really a rare thing for people to listen actively, to care about someone else, and to remember the other things. I started this then, like, it's just my anecdotal evidence, nothing empirical. It was like, if you have a group of people sit around the table, it's much more common for each of them to just try to tell their story, to just wait for the other person to finish so they can tell theirs, instead of interacting, as you say, respond to the story and to the dilemma, emotions, achievements, or trouble that the other person has. So it's like,
and of course you can also, even in a context like that, you can show it to some extent non-verbally.
Yeah.
You can when they're listening, you can show that you're listening. You're not saying, working at your computer or on your phone.
Wow, I can just imagine it's surely not a nice thing if you have a really close relationship, like a marriage, with a spouse for years, and they're unresponsive to what you do, and they don't care, and they don't have emotional responses or intellectual, cognitive, conscious responses to what you said. They don't care, they don't remember. Wow, that's gotta hurt. I think I can imagine, wow, that gotta hurt.
Yeah.
Man.
But if you can show when someone says things, you understand it, you validate it. You don't mean necessarily you agree, but you can understand why they're feeling it, and you care. If you can show that, we call it, understanding, validation, caring. If you can show that, even if it's not that important, but especially if they're saying something important, and even if it's an argument, even if it's something they disagree with you about, you can try to, don't just claim it, but try to think, well, why are they feeling that? And you say, okay, I understand why you're feeling it. I have some different feelings, but I understand and I care. And so we can talk about this. But handling conflicts is really an important thing.
Or
for
also
all
being honest and saying, listen, I don't understand why you react like that right now. I don't understand, but let's get through it. I don't understand what the issue is. I'm going to be honest. We have to communicate. We have to find out what is the issue. I don't know it. I don't understand it, and so on. It's like, even if you don't necessarily, because you said understand it, let's be honest, we all know sometimes humans are crazy and weird, and we just don't get the other person. But validating them in the sense that, listen, I care about you, even if I don't understand it right now, and I'm willing to put effort into understanding you.
Yeah.
I think that's also like really powerful for relationships. At least
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
witnessed it. Like, man, please help me understand what you mean. Please help me understand. And I just experienced it. It's like the people really, really took a positive thing from that away when, after discussing it for an hour or 2 hours, you get to the point where you say, man, or hey, now I understand what you mean. And from that moment on, you're a bit closer because the other person realized, wow, he really took effort into it. And we all experience it with someone else too, who really tried to understand what our problem is. And it's like, that's so cool. That I think it's great that you've got empirical data on that, that really puts it into perspective. And that's, wow. So just for a recap for our viewers, it's like, if you want to have a good relationship, a healthy relationship, and that long term, if I took it correctly, is do some new, novel, exciting things with your partner, friends, family. Try to be understanding and responsive. Show them that you care. Show them that you're interested in them as a person. And if I may ask, for me, it sounded a bit like that, but I'm not too sure. Since I have the self-expansion through that other person, I experience myself, my life, and the reality additionally in more than just through me, through my partner. There, I think, comes the value in it. In I can't have a healthy relationship if I don't like myself. It's like, how does that come into the equation? Have you got any data or any information or read any studies on that? Because if I'm doing it to expand myself, but I don't like, or I don't trust myself, or some another issue that people have, I don't think I'm worthy of having a good life. It's also an issue that sadly a lot of people have. How does that change the depiction of the partner or the relationship? Do you have
Oh,
any?
it's as I was saying before, your anxiety, depression, but also your sort of view of yourself, your self-esteem, like all of those negative things are very hard on the relationship. Now, people do manage to have relationships over and above that if so much else is in place, but it really is hard on the relationship. And the best thing you can do is try to get some help. What you're describing, some of this is called attachment insecurity. There's many aspects of this, but and sometimes if you have that insecurity and you've got a partner who just keeps putting up with you and supporting you, it can help you overcome it. But on the whole, the best thing is to get some help yourself. Get some therapy, or if it's not that serious, learn to meditate, do something that'll ease it. But if it's serious, if it's moderately, even, it's worth getting therapy, individual therapy, to deal with it. And I mean, if you have a couple problems, couple therapy is another whole story. It can be helpful too. But I'm talking about for yourself. And if it's very serious, see a psychiatrist and get medications and that sort of thing. But it's really important. And it's as I was saying, on the downside of making it difficult to have relationships, it's probably the biggest factor.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. Well, that is
I mean,
gonna
it's
be.
just so hard to have people manage, but it's so a few manage, but it
Yeah.
is so hard to have a good relationship when you're down on yourself or you're anxious or depressed or any of those things.
Well, I would say there are always those outliers. Like, yeah, they manage to do it, and it's like, but let's be honest, you want to put yourself into the best possible position. So if you've got
Yes,
issues with yourself, with the way you choose your partner, with the way you receive, if you receive that honest affection, that honest responsiveness, and something in you has a problem with that, no matter what, go and talk to people, try to get your help. No matter which way, don't have a taboo about it. It's an important thing for
yeah,
yourself, for the rest of your life,
absolutely,
and it's going to benefit your partner too. Because some people don't want to put in the
absolutely,
work for themselves, but then convince yourself by saying, listen, my partner will have a better life if I get better and I get these things sorted out in some way. I think that's really,
absolutely.
important. Yeah. Wow. 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 Um, I'm a bit curious now. We talked about a lot about the romantic feelings, but as someone who's a bit business minded like myself, of course, I would like to ask a bit, how could I get, or do you have any advice, any information, or any inkling about the question? How could I use these informations in a corporate culture to to form a good team? We know it's also 1/3 of our life will be at work. It would be nice if our work environment is also a pleasant one. I think, at least it's like from an interpersonal uh, dynamic. So how could I, either as a colleague just for my team, or as a team leader for my team, or as the CEO up to for the whole company, what could I do to make it as pleasant, positive, and productive as possible? Do you have a few tips and tricks for
Well,
me?
I think, I haven't researched that directly, but certain things we know in general would seem to apply. Again, this thing of your own state, your own mental health is going to be very hard in the work context as well, and it's worth working on. But many of these things, I would think that, many organizations periodically have some sort of adventure that people do together. We also have this procedure for creating closeness in the lab. It's called the Fast Friends, or it's been called 36 questions in much of the research in literature. That can be done. You can take it's people talk about the 36 questions to fall in love. They weren't designed for that. They were designed to create closeness between strangers. And you can do it with people who know each other too. You could take a group of employees or workers and put them into pairs and have them do this, and they'll create some nice friendships. That's another thing. But and you can train people to listen and and if you're a leader, you can provide a model of that. I would think all of these things matter.
Leading by example, not by a poster on the wall that says friendship or communication, but really living it. But now you mentioned it, I mean, you're famous for it. It's like if someone Googles your name, you're famous for the 36 questions. It's like huge in pop culture. It was spread far, and may I ask, how do they work and why do they work? It's like, for the viewers, the link will be in the description below, just so you know, so that you can take a look at it. But how exactly? Why do they work? What in our caveman brain makes it work to okay, cool, that's someone I like now after these few questions. What is it? It's like,
Well,
what?
we developed this procedure so that in the lab we could randomly assign people to get close or not. So we could study closeness experimentally. And, if you just bring people in who are already close, they have different histories, they've chosen each other. So we're able to randomly assign people to get closer to do an alternate task that they don't get, doesn't change much. So that's what it was designed for. So we looked at the literature on how people describe what happened when they got to know someone. And generally what happens is you reveal things about yourself both ways and more intimately over time. Not too much too fast, or it sort of puts the person off, but not keeping it at small talk. You move gradually from small. So the 36 questions gradually get more and more personal. And that's basically, and the idea is that you each answer each question. And now what we found since is that one of the main reasons it works is because it provides an opportunity for each of you to be responsive to the other about something that matters. Now, the other thing I should say is that within the 36 questions, we've thrown in 2 or 3 that also help build closeness, that just we threw in because we know there's research on that. And one is we have some items, an item a little later after they've done some back and forth. Name some things you've noticed you have in common. So that they're, and then another one a little later is name some things you've noticed you like about the other. Now, we never say name some things you don't like. So that's basically how the procedure works. And we did a lot of pilot testing on it. And we found that in 45 minutes in the lab, we can get people as close to, or almost as close to this person, they're a stranger, as to someone that they're really close to. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily last, but it definitely creates that feeling of it right on the spot.
And it's insane. It's again the same mix of
Yes.
responsiveness and conscious effort to listen to the other person.
Yes.
Wow, and
We
to give
provide an opportunity for that.
liked. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Humans really like to have other humans listen to us and to like us, it seems. So we are very hardwired to react positively to other people being positive to us. Wow.
Yeah.
I think that's interesting. Really. Wow. I mean, wow. Arthur, wow, it was such a great interview. I thank you very much for all of these informations. I hope that it will be spread to many people who will have a better relationship thanks to your research and your information. I thank you very, very much that you took the time to come here. And I wish you and your family just the very, very best. And I thank you. Can't tell you how much I thank you for them. Really, it was a pleasure. It was an honor, and I wish you the very best. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity the great questions, and the opportunity to share all this knowledge, my research, and others to really be helpful to people. Thank you.